I don't want to eat.
Tim, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to go?
Let's just sit here. Please. I'll just real quick.
All righty. So hello, all you good people. Delighted that you have chosen to spend Wednesday evening with us and to get a little bit of an update on what we have been doing since March to respond to the COVID-19 crisis that hit all our communities. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jim Heininger, and I have the pleasure of serving as the president of the board of directors this year. So we've got gathered here a number of our key donors and very important people to us. So let me start out by saying thank you all on behalf of our clients, the staff, and the board of directors for your generosity and all that you have done to help us achieve our mission of ending homelessness in West Suburban Cook County. It's only due to the generosity of folks that we were able to respond quickly last March as the crisis began to hit us. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to guess that by the end of tonight's presentation, you are going to be even prouder of your association with this organization when you hear about the great work that's being done. So a lot has happened since March. It's a point in time where literally everything, companies, businesses, families, schools, all of us as individuals had to pivot in everything that we were doing to be able to respond to shelter-in-place orders and to protect ourselves. It has been a transformational moment for Housing Forward. And you're going to hear tonight some of the specifics of what we've been doing and hear about the bold new steps that we're taking going forward. But I want you to walk away with one key thought behind all this. It is due to the very hard-earned reputation that this organization has built through collaborative relationships, through operational excellence in our programs, and through a reputation for innovation that we are able to do the things that you're going to hear about tonight. So all of you have been a part of helping to build that reputation that's allowing us to be able to make these moves forward. So it is a turning point, and you're going to hear some exciting things. So some housekeeping things. If you want to keep your Zoom on mute, Lynda is going to be presenting. We will do questions and answers at the end. If you want to type a question into the chat box, you're more than welcome to, and that'll have some of them queued up for Lynda when we get to that point at the end of the presentation. But please keep your cameras on if you can too. It's good to see everybody's faces. And I want to see you smile and jump up and down when you hear some of the things we're going to share tonight. So I'd like to hand it over to the person that is truly the superhero. As far as we are concerned, our leader who is able to take us from strategic visioning to operational excellence in a single bound, and that is Lynda Schueler. And we are delighted to have her. We are thankful to have her, and know that you all believe and feel strongly that she is a terrific leader for this organization. So I will hand it over to Lynda, and thank you.
Thank you. Oh, am I muted? No. Okay. You know, it's one of these things where like you're multitasking. Am I muted? Does my hair look okay? Well, it's so good to see all of you. We really wanted to take a moment out of a super busy schedule to set aside time to speak with some of you very important people to us, donors of ours. We have moved very quickly in the last 7 months, and we really felt we needed to bring everybody up to speed. We've been doing a lot of communication with our volunteers, with pastors, with community leaders and other community stakeholders. These things never happen in a bubble. Right? We really pride ourselves on making sure that we're not only kind of very, just relentlessly focused on the needs of our clients, leading with our values, which includes absolutely innovation, but, you know, at the very core, treating people with dignity and respect. And homelessness is trauma inducing. It can create medical conditions that people didn't have before. It can exacerbate medical conditions. It can tear families apart. And what we do as an organization is not only, you know, create that pathway for people, but create a connection with our clients. Building trust is so important. Building community where community has been lost for them. We are that, I always say we're that last kind of rung on that ladder when all of those other resources, those support systems have exhausted themselves. That's when people find themselves at our front door. So we are not unaccustomed to crises. For those of you who have been with us for a long period of time, you know, we have weathered crises before, including a fire and, you know, water main breaks and what have you. And we have always found ourselves the ability to be adaptable and nimble, and always kind of staying focused on what is our mission, and how do we keep the work that we do not only sustainable, but thriving in a way that we're always putting a mirror up to ourselves, and how can we do better, even in the light of a public health crisis like COVID-19. So thank you all for being here and giving us an hour of your time to share some of the work that we have been doing here. So this is tonight's agenda. And we've got actually a nice size group here, not overwhelming. So there will be, we'll set aside time at the end for people to ask questions, but we wanted to obviously bring you back to all the way back to March to tell you what we've been doing. Some of the lessons learned from the past 7 months, our kind of our system response and how we're self-reflecting on all the things that have happened to us. We're going to premiere a little video that we've put together. Not a little video, it's an awesome video. And then we're going to talk about our new big program that some of you may have read about either online or in the paper, and some housing initiatives that are also underway that have been not as publicly announced, but wanted to give you a sneak peek about that as well. And then we'll open it up for questions and a conversation with you all. So going all the way back to March, many of you are aware that we had to shut down our PADS shelter program, our rotating system of shelter. 27 years of working in conjunction with the faith communities who have graciously donated their space to us. And, but with COVID, we had to shut that program down, and we converted to a congregate model. And we did that for about 6 days over at Oak Park Temple. And one of our staff tested COVID, tested positive. And we were in regular communication with the Village of Oak Park and the folks there, the village manager and the public health director, Mike Charlie. And it was a decision that had to be made to close the congregate shelter and move everybody into hotels. And that was a long 10 hours on March 23rd, where we had to move all 65 people out of that, out of Oak Park Temple, and put people into Ubers and shuffle people off to various hotels, and trying to book blocks of rooms. And, you know, I think we kind of take for granted now where COVID has become a new normal, but at the time, you know, we were, you know, trying to contain and have the right messaging around COVID and not knowing all the things that we know now. So we closed that program. We closed our daytime support center, and in order to keep all of our clients safe, our staff safe, and our volunteers safe, we moved to the hotel model of sheltering in place. And over the entire summer, the end of spring, throughout the summer, and then obviously into early fall here, we continued to use the 3 hotels that we were operating out of, one in Oak Park, the Carlton, the Super 8 in North Lake, and the Best Western in Franklin Park. And over the course of 7 months, sheltering over 200 people. And for those of you who are familiar with the PADS program, right, we normally shut down in May, we take a break, we launch our summer transitional shelter, which accommodates 15 people. So to go from, you know, a normal year where, you know, everything kind of slows down a bit for the shelter, having to continue to have an elevated response, and at a time, I think the maximum number of people we were keeping over at the hotels, I think we'd reached like 118 people. So, you know, that was putting quite a bit of a strain on staff being, you know, operating out of 3 locations, and weekend coverage and all of those things. So we were learning a lot from that, and I'll share as we move forward here a little bit about that. Oh, Simone is here. Clients' needs were being met, and so that was the good thing. But we also had to tap into using caterers and restaurants. That became very expensive very quickly as well. We did receive 2 significant grants to help us actually hire local caterers and help local restaurants. By supporting us, we were supporting them through a foundation grant that we got, so we were actually able to pay for those meals. And then we implemented a new process called diversion, and I will talk about that a little bit further down because that was another lesson learned. So while we were sheltering folks in place, there was, you know, another crisis looming, and that is mass layoffs, stimulus checks that, you know, only went so far, high unemployment. And while the state had put a moratorium in place, unless you could provide evidence that it was COVID related, you know, I mean, that's very stressful. And so preparing ourselves for a new wave of potentially newly homeless individuals that might be coming our way. So built up our capacity early, like in May and in June, building up our staff and applying for some public grants to be able to provide the necessary rental, utility assistance, even mortgage assistance for those that were not able to meet those expenses because of their own financial hardships that they were experienced due to COVID. And so we're doing that work as well. So as I go through this, kind of, you know, be mindful of, we've got these kind of parallel programs that we're operating that are all being flooded with need. People who are in their homes but can't pay their bills to be able to stay in the housing, those newly homeless folks that we're trying to keep safe, and the newly homeless that are coming to us and from the streets. Okay. So in late June, early July, we were really trying to figure out, okay, what is, we need an exit strategy because this is getting very costly. And, you know, I'm costly meaning like upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars costly, just keeping people safe in hotels. And Jim and I had a conversation with the pastors and some of our site captains in early June. their feedback to us back then was, unless there's a vaccine right away, unless the state moves into phase 5, the PADS program is not going to be able to come back into those facilities come the fall when the normal season would open back up. So that put us in a position of having to think, what are we going to be able to do? So in July, we started our hotel to home program and began the process of master leasing some units. And really what those master lease units are as some additional public funding through the CARES Act, which is the funding that Congress approved back in April, as those applications started coming forward. We said we need to focus on prevention and we need to focus on getting people rehoused. So in July, we started putting people on a path towards what's their housing destination going to be. And in some cases, we were able to master lease about 16 units that became available to us, kind of concentrated in a few buildings where we were able to kind of decompress the hotels, move folks into these bridge units because it was frankly just cheaper. And these bridge units allowed people kind of to step down from the hotels because, while, staying in a hotel may seem a lot of fun in the beginning, it becomes very tiresome after 4 months of being in these hotels. So we started that process of moving people into some of these bridge units. And then we also started people on this path towards housing. And then we launched our hotel to home program. And that was our effort to, for those of you who may be affiliated through one of your congregations, helping out in the past with our house to home program, or it's very similar. We had a goal of rehousing 110 people staying in the hotels. And we thought, okay, well, we've identified this housing pathway for folks, but none of these people have any pots and pans. They don't have mops. They don't have microwaves. And so we thought, well, people are pretty familiar with the house to home program and organizing and collecting items. And so we launched hotel to home, and again, a huge lift. We probably collect, in a normal year, 20 to 25 house to home kits. And we thought this is going to be a big effort of trying to collect 110. I will tell you tonight, we learned this morning, we have collected 70 hotel to home kits. Each kit is probably 40 items. The silverware, the pots and pans, 44. And so to collect 70 full complete kits, we ran out of space here at our office. We had to rent a U-Haul, unload everything here. We went over to Oak Park Temple. They gave us 4 classroom spaces to be able to store all of those hotel to home kits. So those are all over there now. And as people get connected to their housing unit, we've got volunteers that are helping us move those kits and get people set up into their apartments. So that has been the strategy since July, is collecting those kits and getting folks onto their housing path. So these lessons learned over the last 7 months, it seems like forever ago, but going from a congregate setting where people are sleeping very close in proximity to one another, not sleeping too far off the ground, that has been our model since our founding in 1992, and it's worked up until the public health crisis. And so moving people into hotels, we learned that wow, people's attitudes are much better. They're not as stressed out. They're able to stay there 24/7. They have their own accommodations where they can heat up food in the microwave. They can shower whenever they want. They can do laundry whenever they want. And they're healthy. About a third of the population is considered high risk, meaning that they already have underlying medical conditions, which makes them highly vulnerable to contracting COVID, or their age puts them at risk. So by keeping folks into their own, accommodation, they're keeping themselves safe, and they're keeping the community that we've been sheltering safe as well. Meeting these basic needs. We have enjoyed a daytime support center for many, many years. People come up to the support center and they take a shower, they get their laundry, they get their mail, but that's a full day. To go from, where all the shelters are, primarily in Oak Park. We do have some in Berwyn and Forest Park, but to, have to set aside a full day to come up to the support center in Maywood to just get some basic needs met, all of that went away with the hotels, because they didn't have to work with our schedule. They could take a shower whenever they wanted, again, or doing their own laundry. All of those were built-in accommodations with the hotels. So that was an improvement to the model as well. Our assessments, our engagement with clients, and case management went through the roof. We weren't tracking people down. We weren't trying to squeeze in case management sessions in the evening at the shelter, because we could do that kind of around the clock, unless people were sleeping. And people were there. We're not trying to find them. And so that engagement increased. It's put people in a position of being able to put them on that path to housing much quicker because of that. So a much more efficient, much more comprehensive process that we were able to create with being in the hotels. So this has allowed us to really kind of hit the reset button. There is no way that we could have experienced any of these learnings without having been forced to be in a position of renting hotels. So, but that's not sustainable forever, right? So it's allowed us to do an examination of our shelter operations and how do we improve and innovate. It's one of our guiding principles as an organization. We don't, even though we've got a nice long history, we really pride ourselves on being innovative and being willing to take risks where we need to improve our operations. So we've looked towards the guidance that the CDC provided right at the beginning for this population, moving people experiencing homelessness, those on the streets, those living in encampments, to do what you can to move people into hotels. The National Alliance to End Homelessness put together a framework of not just this immediate response of providing hotels for people, but how do we evolve a model that has traditionally used a congregate shelter or congregate settings to shelter people, but to continue to provide these individual accommodations once COVID ends, when we don't know when that's going to end. So really looking at the national level for that. We've hired our own consulting firm, a subject matter consultant called Clutch Consulting, that we hired to help us figure out what our new system was going to be. So we're looking at our data. Eric, I think you're, and trying to figure out what is our future look like in terms of what does that continuous inflow into the system look like? What is the length of stay that people will need with us until that housing is approved? And then what is that outflow? So we want to have sufficient housing resources. We're not having to turn people away like we've had in the past at the shelter door where, you know, we have to turn people away because there's just no room. So how do we redesign and enhance our process for addressing those that are literally homeless, but looking at it from a whole system perspective, from that prevention to that crisis response to getting people stably housed. You can't just look at one segment. You really have to design the whole system. Okay, so Chris Martinez, who is our new Chief Operating Officer, is going to queue up our short video here. And I think I have to stop sharing, is that correct? Okay. Get your popcorn. No.
Since our founding in 1992, Housing Forward has been passionately focused on one vision: ending homelessness. Over the past 28 years, 17,000 individuals and families experiencing or at risk of homelessness have been assisted. We do what it takes to assist those who need our help, and we never shy away from a challenge. When the COVID-19 pandemic began to take root in our communities, we rolled up our sleeves and responded.
We quickly shifted our emergency shelter services to temporary individual accommodations and motel spaces as the safest option possible to shelter in place 24/7.
Since March, Housing Forward has provided 19,860 nights of shelter and 58,580 meals to nearly 200 individuals and families. As the pandemic continues into the fall, more and more families will be on the brink of financial crisis threatening their homes. We are working to prevent homelessness before it begins by increasing our capacity to provide emergency financial assistance and other resources to help people stay in their homes.
Our faith community partners are unable to open their doors for shelter services to those who are most vulnerable to the coronavirus. To ensure a safe and stable environment for clients,
we are responding again. Housing Forward has leased a 65-bed hotel to launch a new interim housing model.
we are reimagining our shelter services to launch a 24-hour-a-day, 365-day-a-year program that will provide temporary shelter and services while clients connect to housing resources and end their homelessness as soon as possible.
The program will offer all of our clients the full array of Housing Forward services: ongoing case management, health assessments and screenings, assistance in securing employment, entitlement benefits, and other income supports.
The program will also dedicate 18 beds for medical respite services and expanding upon our partnership with Cook County Health and County Care.
And there's more. This fall, we are launching 2 additional projects that take big steps toward ending homelessness.
Bridge for Youth is a collaborative project for youth experiencing homelessness. We have joined forces with 4 local housing and social services agencies to provide expert and specialized services.
Victory's Path provides apartments, intensive case management, and wraparound support services. Our diverse program model offers an extensive menu of services that will support vets to achieve independence.
Housing forward. Ending homelessness for those we serve is possible. Your generous support is an investment towards this vision.
Yay! All right, so a couple of tidbits in there that we're going to expand on. So the obviously the big news is our leasing of the formerly known as the Ride-In. And let me get my. So what is interim housing? So let me tell you, shelter is 12 hours, which is the old PADS model. And usually emergency shelter is considered a congregate setting. So what interim housing is it's 24/7. It's similar in that we will continue to provide accommodations, obviously, for those that come to us, but they will be individual accommodations. So just like the hotel settings, we will continue to provide meals, but there will be a very intentional focus on connecting people to housing resources to end their homelessness when they come into the program over at the new interim housing program, formerly known as the Ride-In. We have leased the entire building except for the restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
We're not operating, that is not our mission. That would be total mission creep. So what's over at the Ride-In? There are 65 hotel rooms on 4 floors, and there are 91 beds. So we have dedicated some of the rooms to staff offices and communal areas for where we're handing out food. I see Rick Easty has joined us. Rick Easty is our contractor and one of our amazing original volunteers. Rick, you should show yourself. Wave. There's Rick. So see this door right here in the middle? This is a little bit of Rick's bane of his existence. Rick moved this door to the immediate left over here to this opening so we could have our own private entrance to the Ride-In. So we will not be using this front entrance. This awning has come down. The front entrance will be used exclusively for the restaurant patrons. And then this entrance is on the south side. So we'll have exclusive access to the building that way. And the reason why it was important that we used that door was because it has a key card on it. And we didn't want to spend $2,500 on a new key card. So Rick moved that door for us. So thank you, Rick. So 4 floors of hotel rooms. And one of those floors is going to be dedicated, the first floor is going to be dedicated to an expansion of our medical respite program. So many of you might be aware we have a program called Sojourner House, which is a house in Oak Park where we have partnered with McNeil Hospital, Loyola Medicine. That was 3 units of medical respite. So we kind of dipped our toe into the water. This is an expansion off of that program, but in partnership with Cook County Health. And so 18 to 20 beds on that one floor dedicated for them. They will have round the clock nursing that will be devoted to the patients on that floor. These will be individuals who are homeless, but have nowhere else to go. So these aren't just patients that are leaving the hospital that obviously would have a destination. These are folks that are literally homeless that would have to go into, otherwise either go back out on the streets after their surgery or what have you, or go to another shelter setting, maybe in the city. But this is going to provide them with the necessary recovery and recuperation to help them. So then the other couple of things that you heard on the video was some new programs that we have received funding for. Way back in the spring, we didn't know anything about the write-in, but we knew that we were going to have this housing surge. How were we going to get those 110 people out of those 3 hotels? So in the spring, we had applied for some funding, and that funding was awarded to us for 2 programs. The Bridge for Youth program, which is dedicated for homeless youth. They're called transition age youth, 18 to 24-year-olds that have either aged out of the foster care system, are not allowed, they're either runaways, they can't go back home for whatever reason. So we have dedicated funding to help these transition age youth. We are partnering with New Moms and Youth Outreach Services, as well as the African American Christian Foundation, which is a employment readiness agency in Oak Park that does programming exclusively for transition age youth. So we have 27 units for that population. We also mentioned in the video that we've been awarded some funding for assisting veterans, and that program is called Victory's Path, and that will be 15 units of housing for military veterans. Also part of our housing surge is an expansion of our rapid rehousing program. That program is expanding because of the CARES Act funding that we have been awarded. So that's going to allow us to house about 60 households through that program. We have partnered with the Oak Park Housing Authority, who has secured, they're called mainstream vouchers, but it's basically a housing choice voucher for somebody who's experiencing homelessness and has a disabling condition. And then at the top here is we have been serving about 9 families. About half of them are large families with more than 3 children. We didn't want to move those families into the write-in for some obvious reasons. We wanted to provide them with just a better setting. Many of the families have school-age children, and the e-learning and the access to Wi-Fi, and just having that private space that kids need to really do learning in this new environment. We master leased, we rented a 3-flat in Oak Park, close to Maple Park. And so the same week that we moved the clients from the 3 hotels into the write-in, which was the week of September 28th, we also moved 3 of the larger families into what we're calling Ohana House, which is Hawaiian for no family left behind. This is a huge lift for our agency, for any agency. You know, just renting out the write-in, going from, you know, a program model that we have used volunteers as taking the lead and donated space, to now renting an entire hotel for 1 year. And then not to mention these other new fabulous opportunities, housing initiatives that have come our way to be able to help us get folks housed. There's a pathway for everybody. You know, it's, nobody needs to linger in homelessness. And I have said that for many, many years, and we're really trying to prove that with this re-envisioning of our model and how we are addressing homelessness for our neighbors in need in the community. So that is a lot to absorb, but we can now, and we can do a time check. 7:43. So we've got opportunity if I don't know, do I everybody can unmute themselves. And again, we still have a relatively manageable group here. There's about 18 people on the call. I will stop sharing the screen here and open it up to all of you for what questions you may have.
And I'm just curious at the last piece, where is that Ohana house?
Ohana, yeah. On
So it's on Maple Avenue over there. Okay, so this is just between you and us. Okay, but it's at 1030 South Maple Avenue.
You
So-
want to keep that confidential?
Well, yeah, we don't want people knocking on the door over there. But it was a unicorn find for us. This was a 3-flat that was being renovated. And they are large units. There's actually one of the second floor, there's 3, it's a 3-flat, 3 apartments. The second floor actually has 4 bedrooms. So it was this find, and we thought, wow, you know, let's take this opportunity to have something special for these larger families. We have the coach house over at Sojourner House where that's a 3-bedroom, so we're able to accommodate a large family over there. But we just needed more, so we rented out the 3-flat as well. So it's a supplement to the write-in, and it's an expansion of our Families in Transition program, which is the work that we were doing with the schools to mitigate homelessness.
And so you have the expectation, and it seems like it's working, that this is this whole housing first model, right? That when you put these people in a unit, they get better and out of the system even faster, right?
Exactly. People are not lingering in, the crisis response is hopefully shortened because we have built up this pipeline now for these housing resources to get people quickly moved through the process. And then obviously freeing up beds at the write-in to be able to accept newly homeless individuals.
Yeah, I just can't say enough of how proud I am of you. And I mean, I can't imagine how hard you've worked to get all this done in your team, and it's just incredible.
Yeah.
You know, so we hired this firm called Clutch Consulting, and to help us figure out our model. And we had a phone call with them today. They were sharing the draft report that they prepared for us. It's a very comprehensive report on what our need has to be for all these various components of the system that we're trying to develop here. And this is a firm out of Houston, Texas. And they said, and Chris was on this call, he said, you know what, you all are just weird because nobody is doing this kind of work as quickly as you are doing it, and in a community that is so responsive to your needs. And that's really a testament to Oak Park.
Yeah.
It really is. We could not be doing this work in really any other place. I'm confident of that because, you know, where there are encampments and you know, homelessness is really frowned upon. And we're trying to demonstrate that we can figure out this model. We're not doing this alone. We have the support of the village. We have the support of the pastors, even though they said you can't come back, Lynda, they provided us with support. And certainly the funding. All of these pieces have to come together like a puzzle piece and get aligned in order for us to be able to do this kind of work.
You know, I just have to say, I have a friend that lives in Portland, which is another progressive community, and their view, and she's progressive, and they still do just what you said. They don't warm up to this issue, right? They don't tackle it as an affirmative obligation. They still think of it as, you just get the sense when you hear about homelessness up and down the West Coast that they're not taking it on. They're just upset about it, right? They don't do what you're doing. And so it's my vision that at some point in your career, you'd take it on the road and
Yeah.
bring this to the other communities in the country that just are not handling it at
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah.
Linda. It's Bill.
Hey, Bill, and then Andrea.
Okay. Well, Andrea first, and then Bill.
Okay.
Hey,
All right. Hi, Andrea.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
I am wondering how you proceed the next step from hotel living to permanent housing, given the fact that low-income housing is still so scarce.
Yeah.
Is there some way you've begun to see a path forward, maybe with community or state help or anything?
Yeah. It's a really good question. So the housing resources that we have are a combination of like what we would consider permanent housing. So housing that has long-term subsidies. So those mainstream vouchers are considered a permanent long-term subsidy. And those 33 vouchers are going to be dedicated to the most disabling of the population that we're serving right now. Those that are on, fixed incomes of Social Security benefits, that don't have the ability to really increase their income to be able to sustain themselves in housing beyond, 6, 9, 12 months. So we do have that benefit of having those vouchers. The other housing resources I mentioned, Victory's Path, Bridge for Youth, even the rapid rehousing, those are basically 12 to 24 month programs. And we have to work with the client to increase their income while they're in the program. So they can take over that unit on their own when they graduate, if you will. So we've got to get them to a point, maybe they're making $15 an hour when they come into the program. We've got to work them up to a point where they're going to be able to sustain themselves in that housing where we place them, so they can take on the responsibility of paying rent on their own. It's a huge issue that we grapple with, is affordable housing. And sometimes people have to, very frequently, they have to move out of Oak Park in order to find that affordable housing.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Andrea?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Okay, Bill.
Hi, Linda. As you know, I'm a huge fan of you, of yours. I've been a fan of yours for 20 years. And the nimbleness, the flexibility, the adaptability, innovation your response to this pandemic is, it's been incredible. And hats off to you. But you don't need just a cheerleader. So you know that I like to challenge you, right? And so,
You don't know how you.
so a couple of questions.
Okay.
One, we're talking about helping people in the number of 100.
Yep.
And that's probably the scope that we can do. But I'm thinking there's thousands, and 100 families is such a small percentage of those that are in crisis. And so how does Housing Forward think about the fact that all of these resources, a huge amount of resources, serves only,
I know.
and that's the one question I have. The other question that I have is, as you know, I've interviewed a number of clients in the hotels. And one of the things that they bring up to me is how safe and secure they feel in the hotel situation, and that they're sort of this risk of regression, right? That they tell me, a number of them have said to me that they're more fearful of being or trying to be more independent, because the protective envelope of Housing Forward is something that they want to hold on to. So those are my two questions: I guess the multiplier, and then the risk of regression.
Yeah, both really solid questions, Bill. So the first one is, really more systemic in nature. You're absolutely right. There will never be sufficient resources at Housing Forward to get everybody housed. And so how do we leverage partnerships that we have, community partnerships, hospital systems, other nonprofits that also need to be part of the response and part of the solution. So that's why we do some of these housing things. We don't do them on our own. Is the collective impact and the collective approach to addressing some of these issues, because Housing Forward can't do this alone. We can be a leader, but we must rely on other community-based organizations to address this alongside us, because there are mental health issues. We are not a mental health agency. There are health issues. We are not a healthcare system, right? And bringing people to the table to have those conversations is absolutely imperative. And you know me, I mean, I do what I can, and our agency does what we can to reach across the table to bring people and say, you need to be at this table to address some of these issues, because we can't do it alone. And then it always comes down to advocacy and policy as well. So, making sure that those prevention services are in place. The moratorium can stick as long as it can. So the moratorium on evictions now is in place through December. And policy decisions about, affordable housing and using an equity lens for the work that we all do. So I don't want that to be a Pollyanna response, but it is so much bigger than Housing Forward. And then to get to your second question, one of the other things that I said I was going to talk about, which I didn't, was using this diversion approach. So diversion is kind of like the front door now to interim housing, and diversion is a best practice that is used to divert people from becoming literally homeless. So while the prevention activities that we have are used to provide rental assistance so people don't actually lose their housing, diversion is a tactic that is used for people who may already be in a position of being literally homeless, or they're about to become homeless because the person that they may be living with is saying, you can't stay here any longer. So we started doing diversion back in April, and we've been able to divert about 20% of those callers that have called here at the office and said, where's the shelter? I need to get into the shelter. And diversion is an assessment process, basically triaging somebody's situation and trying to figure out what other resources, what other support network they may have, so they don't end up being with us at the outset. You can't divert everybody, but we have implemented some necessary resources and have been able to divert, about 20%.
Well, and I have to say that there were chronic PADS shelter inhabitants that were there for years that you have been able to mobilize, and hats off for that.
Yeah. People who started moving from the hotels, there were eight people who said that they did not want housing. And a few of them left after we started moving people out of the hotels. We don't know where they went. And there are two individuals that have very, very, very serious mental illness, and we have kind of kept them in place as we try to figure out the best housing option for them, because the write-in is not the best option for them in the long term.
Right.
They really need a level of care that is beyond what Housing Forward can provide for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, could I, Bill, I want to thank you for your remarks, and that I really think it's so true that
He was
What-
before, yeah. Harry, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you, Paul?
No, Henry, go ahead. You're okay.
No, the only thing I was going to say is that we are going to need partnership with a lot of the government levels, and so this is a challenge to Simone. I know that right now, and you're aware of this, that we spend 40% of our local budget on policing. And if we're really looking at things through an equity lens, we know that 75% of the people that were diverted into the write-in were African American. What we also know is that only 5% is spent on affordable housing and all other social services in Oak Park. And I think that that's something that needs to be addressed. The other fact is that Oak Park gave, out of the $1 million in the Community Development Block Grant, they gave us 40%. Out of the budget from Berwyn, and that was $400,000. The Berwyn gave us $700,000. So I think there's a lot of improvement that can happen at our local government level, and that's why I think that what you said was so spot on, Bill. So thanks a lot.
So just as to the CDBG, Henry, I'm not familiar with Berwyn's allocation, and I do rely on,
I am, yeah.
yeah, but I don't know their
Should
overall
be.
dollar amount, but I do rely on the CDCAC, the commission that awards CDBG dollars.
Yeah.
Make those assessments, because as Lynda said, she doesn't do it alone, and we have, what do we have, something like 91 not-for-profits in Oak Park, all with missions that intersect with the work of Housing Forward. And so there's a lot of need, and a lot of that allocation is something that as a trustee, I can't get into the depth of it. So luckily we have a citizen commission that is able to do that and make those allocations. But I know that I think Lynda has gotten a significant amount of our CARES funding. And I think I have enough of a relationship with Lynda that if she thought we were ripping her off, probably
It's not a
call.
question ripping off. It's just addressing.
I actually want to hear from her on all these questions. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I had one more question.
Hey, Paul.
Part of the reason you're getting us together is you're going to be asking us for money.
No.
And well, the thing is that this is and I'll use the 91 nonprofits, and I'm more curious on where are you right now and where you headed on fundraising. And I don't know how long you're going to last tonight.
This is 8 o'clock.
I can hear a couple of numbers and what kind of a program do you have going? And then thirdly is how you tying back to the individual churches to ask, maybe even though we're not serving you manually or people there, that maybe some of the churches can focus with Housing Forward a little more extensive if we can tie something in. So what is the nut, Jim? Maybe you can tell us, what's the nut you're looking at for next year?
Me?
Yeah, Lynda, go ahead.
Yeah, so the funding that we have specifically for the write-in, we don't think it won't last for more than a year. That's why we signed a 1-year lease. And we did build into the lease an option to renew, an option of first refusal, and an option to buy. Our board has not had that conversation yet about any of that. And that won't happen until the beginning of 2021. But we will need to, while we bought ourselves a year, we still can't, I will say, financially afford it after a year unless Congress appropriates more funding or we do significant fundraising and potentially a capital campaign. I don't want to say anything about, because the board has to make those decisions. So I don't want to, really kind of open it up for that, but we do think we will have enough funding for the next year to at least address some of the operations over at the Right Inn. The prevention side of the equation, we hope that will last at least a year as well, if not 18 to 24 months. So are we going to need the support of all of our donors? Absolutely. Because there are always going to be those unknowns that are going to come up. They always do. So even with the new funding for these new housing programs, HUD doesn't always give you 100%. And so their fundraising is a 365 day a year issue. But to Jim's earlier point, we are now just realizing those CARES Act dollars. It was the private support from donors in the community and private foundations that made it possible on a cash flow basis to be able to do that hard pivot of supporting clients in hotels for the first 3 months. That was all privately supported because that CARES Act funding is just getting to the streets now.
And to Paul's additional question about the faith communities and how they're supporting now, you want to?
Yeah, so we had a conversation with the site captains and a conversation with the meal groups the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, and trying to re-engage, all of our fabulous, our network of volunteers. And this is a new program model. So having to kind of re-explain the protocols that we're putting in place at the Right Inn, continuing to use the teams that we've had from the 40 plus congregations that we have enjoyed for so many decades. But there are new opportunities, and there's daytime opportunities, and there's now weekend opportunities. So we have put together an FAQ for our volunteers. I believe we sent that out to our network. If you didn't get that, please let us know. But that is our intention, is Paul Beckwith, we need you to come back and do second shift. We still need our volunteers, because while we do have some staff that are there, we really need this to continue to be a community-based program and not just staffed by our staff. That's the way we're going to help to reduce some of the cost, by using volunteers.
Well, can I be idealistic? And Lynda, you tell me if this is true or not. If your model really works, and the overall cost of not-for-profit services or the overall cost of services to the homeless would decrease, in the sense that there'd be less cost to provide medical care to the other overall cost of the services that are provided.
Right. So think of the non-housing forward public costs to not housing people in this way, right?
Yes.
Clients being at the library all day because they don't have the transportation to make it up to the Maywood Support Center. The police calls and the ambulance calls, that sometimes we had in the pad shelter.
And the healthcare system.
The healthcare system, our clients getting sick. I mean, all of that has been reduced. I will say there is a bit of activity in downtown Oak Park with our street outreach program. So we want to be mindful and evaluate that side of our programming, is to make sure that we continue to have robust street outreach. Because as I mentioned on the call with the trustees, last week, this is not an emergency shelter where you can just show up. You have to be pre-screened. That's a dramatic change to our model.
Yeah.
So that's where diversion comes in, and you know, obviously we will be accepting new people into the right-in, but it's not going to be immediate.
Linda, if you could indulge me for 1 second to get specific, there's a guy who tends to live in the yard of St. Edmund's Church. Are you?
Yep.
Are you guys
So
have-
yeah, so Father McGivern reached out to me, and our street outreach team is he's actually a member of that congregation, and our street outreach team member Jeanette has been working to get him connected. Yep. Anybody else? Hey, David.
Yeah, hi, Linda. I'm just curious, are you still able to access the township's general assistance program for people who are sort of permanently in our community?
Yep, yeah, for sure. So Gavin is certainly aware of what's going on, you know, with the write-in. And the township has, as you know, has helped our clients out by providing that general assistance, that cash assistance of roughly $200 a month. And that can help as, you know, people are moving out of the write-in, they can help to supplement, you know, a security deposit or what have you. I mean, we're doing our best to obviously, you know, address people's needs, you know, as it relates to securing identification, all those things that cost. But that general assistance will be necessary as people move back out into the community to kind of supplement their income, because as you know, these are folks that don't have, you know, big slush funds. So that extra general assistance will absolutely go a long way to help people get rehoused.
When they have a housing cost, there's also assistance for that as well. But I assume there is not a cost to your clients. It's not like a you know, a rental or something.
So yeah,
for a rental, they do get more assistance.
Right. Anybody else have any questions? I want to be super mindful of all of your time. You've been so generous with us tonight.
It's been really helpful.
Yeah. Sally, Rick, anybody have any questions?
Well, I was just going to ask, you mentioned the CARES Act having provided some funding that you're now receiving. Is that the principal federal funding that now meets the needs of the programs as you have transformed them? And relatedly, you know, we hear pretty bad prognosis of what the state's budget's going to look like, especially because of the pandemic and you know, lower tax base, lower revenue. So what is the prognosis for the funding from the state for the programs, especially as you've transformed them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, all of this funding has come from the feds. So this CARES Act funding had a couple of different buckets of funds. The biggest fund that is helping us with the hotel is the Coronavirus Relief Fund. So we were awarded funding through the county for that bucket of funding. And then there's the CDBG CARES Act funding. There's the ESG CARES Act funding that Simone mentioned before that is helping us with some of the prevention activities. There is some coronavirus relief funding that came through the state as well. That's helping us out with the rapid rehousing and some of our street outreach activities. What we're hearing from the state is that if the fair tax amendment, which is on the ballot on November 3rd, is not passed, that there can be across the board cuts come July of 2021 of 10 to 15%. And so that will be hitting us at a time when we will be in basically the last quarter of what we expect from the CARES Act funding. So that's critical. You know, if those state dollars aren't there, There's not an additional infusion from Congress. Come October 1st of next year, and obviously in the spring is when the board is going to have to start making some decisions about what's going to be, what options are we going to have? Are we going to continue at the write-in? Are we going to try to fundraise or, but you're absolutely right. The state is not in good shape right now. All of us are incurring at all levels, incurring additional expenses that nobody budgeted for. The village, the state, across the board, nonprofits. So it's a valid question that I don't have a good answer to, but what they're telling us is a 10 to 15% cut come July 1 if the fair tax amendment is not passed.
Yeah, I will say the village has to $26 million down, and one chunk of money that we just didn't spend, and the rest is coming from our fund balance. So most of your funding, Lynda, doesn't come out of our general fund, so it's not going to impact you.
Right.
But generally, people in the world need to understand that there are not going to be a lot of good choices. There's going to be things that are going to disappoint everybody from government, because it's like all of COVID. It's like not having school, right? There's just not a good answer for everything. So it's tough stuff.
All right. Does anybody else have anything?
I want to say something more cheerful than that. That's a horrible note to end on. I'll show you guys my little squirmy puppy that's been.
Oh, so cute. Yeah, let's certainly not end on a down note. I mean, there's so many amazing things to celebrate. I mean, the right in itself, to be able to have a hotel that really kind of meets these immediate needs that we have is pretty amazing. That the owners were so invested in doing this for us. This wasn't just how we are, funding to be there. They really wanted to do this. They really felt that this was the right thing to do with their building. The property actually had been up for sale. They took it off the market to be able to help us. So it's a testament, again, to working with stakeholders in the community to be able to make it possible.
Now, Lynda.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to have the last word. I want someone else to have the last word. But I think we have to underscore again. We go back 7 months, and how you and your organization, how Housing Forward has been nimble and have adapted to extreme, immediate changes. I mean, we all applaud you. We all appreciate you. Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, I think it's a testament to Lynda. It's a testament to extremely strong leadership. And it's a testament to the mission of the organization.
Yeah.
You've stayed true to your mission through all kinds of crises. Through, I remember when I was on the board, there was the sequestration of federal money. I mean, the uncertainties that this organization has not only survived but thrived, are really a testament to the leadership and the mission of the organization. And so I applaud you.
Yeah, thanks.
Here, here.
All right. So on that note, go eat dinner at Heininger's Bistro.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Don't forget to vote for the fair tax.
Oh, yeah.